Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
It's Monday morning. Oh, gee, how you doing? How are you doing?
I'm just excited to be here.
Fantastic.
Hear it. You can hear it in his voice, can't you?
As
It's just electricity.
As my friend Marshawn Lynch says, I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Starting up the week on a,
Just here so I don't get fined.
Positive note. I know you can do it. No, hey, Stackers, you can do it. You know why?
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
If OG can show up on a Monday like this, you can open a Roth IRA. It's fantastic.
Just do it so you don't get fined.
yeah,
Talking about practice.
your retirement gets fined if you don't.
Ellen Iverson, different person.
That is a different person.
I understand.
Skittles, driving the cart, Cal.
Just put it this way. You can either show up and not get fined, or you can pull a Deshaun Watson and just, nope. Like,
Also a completely different person.
Wow.
but you can like have fun. Thank you. Did you know, Doug, that Deshaun Watson is not Marshawn Lynch?
We could not be further sideways than we are right now.
Nobody needs to pull a Deshaun Watson.
Please, God,
Don't do
put
that.
this back on track.
You can either have fun your Roth and walk off the field, or you can show up and do the whole thing so you don't get fined. Oh, look at that Mickey Mouse mug. It's fantastic. I've got the Ferrari mug because this is the Ferrari of opens right here. On behalf of the men and women making podcast in Mom's Basement and the men and women at Navy Federal Credit Union, big shout out to our troops. Thank you for all you do. Let's go stack some Benjamins together, so we don't get fined.
Cheers.
Who's with me? All right, let's do this, people.
Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and God, math, am I right? Well, buckle up, Stacker, because today we'll introduce you to a guy who makes math a blast. Today's mentor is the one and only Ben Orlin. Plus, in our headline, we'll share the #1 way that Americans are becoming millionaires. Could you be one as well? Of course you can. And don't you worry, midway through today's show, I'll share some of my world-famous trivia. And now, 2 guys who are like the variety pack of cereals at the store. One's kind of fruity and the other one could use more fiber. It's Joe and O-J-J-J-J-G.
Hey there, Stackers. Happy Monday. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter or X or whatever we call it. And you know what, Doug? I think the guy sitting across the card table from me has had too much fiber. So I'm the one that hasn't had enough fiber. So you can do the math on who OG must be.
Fruitcake.
How are you, my friend?
The coffee's starting to sink in, so loosen up a little bit.
That's good. That's good. Because after the amazing open we had to this show,
Wow.
you
Man.
can feel the excitement.
Just settle down a little bit, OG. You just don't compete with my energy. You just got to chill.
Well, the good news is, Doug, is that we don't really have to rely a lot on OG's energy today because we got a guy that's bringing the energy. Ben Orlin's here. He is a guy who is a math teacher who can't draw. He will tell you he cannot draw. And so math and bad drawings from Ben Orlin. And by the way, what's made better for drawings than a podcast, right? Take a look at this one, everybody. Oh, that's bad.
And yet, here's another stick figure of a guy with a calculator.
And look at how his arms aren't even the same length.
Right. It looks like a cucumber to me, Ben.
So Ben Orlin is here. OG, can you draw?
I can't. I can draw a lot of lessons from our upcoming advertiser. I don't know.
Oh,
From our upcoming
I was
advertisers.
you're so close.
I'm trying to get something. It's like, where is it?
I'm like, oh, keep going, man. Keep
it's in the
going,
dark.
man. You're there. You're almost
I'm in
there.
the dark and I'm just trying to like
And he bailed.
grab something as I plummet.
Well, is this what you were trying to grab right here? These two
Whoa,
that
no,
make the
it wasn't
podcast
that.
free? Is it these two? Dell PCs with Intel Inside are built for the moments you plan and the ones you don't. They're for those all-night study sessions, the moment you're working from a cafe and realize every outlet's taken, the times you're deep in your flow and can't be interrupted by an auto update. That's why Dell builds tech that adapts to you. Built with long-lasting batteries so you're not scrambling for an outlet, and built-in intelligence that makes updates around your schedule, not in the middle of it. Find technology built for the way you work at Dell.com/Dell PCs. Built for you. In business, there is no room for guesswork. Every shipment matters. Every deadline counts. And when you're trying to keep operations running smoothly, the last thing you need is uncertainty. That's why reliability is at the core of USPS Ground Advantage. From the moment your package is first scanned in, it moves through a secure nationwide network, aiding in a timely and accurate delivery. You get near real-time tracking so you can keep up with your shipments. And with affordable upfront pricing, there are no hidden fees or surprise surcharges to throw off your cost sheets. It all adds up to predictable deliveries you can depend on, because knowing your logistics are handled lets you focus on everything else, your customers, your team, and the future you're building. Visit USPS.com/Ground Advantage to start shipping with confidence. USPS Ground Advantage. We mean business. We got Ben Orlin joining us. Ben is a force of nature. I love this guy. We're going to have so much fun because so many people think math is not only difficult, but also incredibly boring. And as I had to learn through my career, math is often the way that stories get told. He not only has written the classic book, Math with Bad Drawings, he's also written Change is the Only Constant, Math Games of Bad Drawings, most recently Math for English Majors. He's appeared in the Atlantic, Popular Science, Slate, Vox, Los Angeles Times, and he himself has appeared in the lines to ice cream stores everywhere.
Oh,
That's my favorite
see what he
line
did there.
in Ben's bio. BBC star and leading mathematician Hannah Fry once described him as, quote, terribly bad at drawing before kindly adding, quote, he's also fantastically clever and charming. And he is clever, charming, and he's here to teach us about math on a Monday. What could be more fun? Let's say hello to Ben Orlin. And I'm super happy we have him coming down to the card table in Mom's basement. Ben Orlin is here. How are you, man?
No, I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks, Joe.
I have to tell you, I hated math. And I know I'm not alone. You meet people like me all the time, Ben.
Yeah, we call them human beings. We call them. It's a lot of people.
The reason I hated math comes specifically from 7th grade. I had a math teacher in 7th grade. You know, we're just starting to get into algebra. Math is just starting to become more like poetry, which you and I are going to talk about. But it takes me a little longer. In fact, you've got a story in your book about a kid that you were teaching who answered all the questions right. He was just really slow at it, right? And I felt like that was me. And so this guy would write all this cool stuff on the board, Ben. He'd write all this stuff, and then he would go, oh, but you already know that. And he'd erase it. And I never learned a thing. And the thing I learned was math is bad. Stay away from math, which is the wrong lesson.
Yeah, no, that's it. Everyone should just learn math is something to stay away from. Just leave it to us teachers to, keep the paycheck coming our way. You gotta keep the gates up high. Yeah, exactly that age, 7th grade. That's a real pivot point for a lot of people with math. That's the moment when it stops being something that you feel like you got a grasp on. It just slips away and you watch it bobbing off into the distance in the ocean and then you never get it back. Yeah, but great student, a lovely kid who really patient and thoughtful. And like I always talk too fast, and he was just a very measured speaker, very slow. He had like nice round glasses, kind of reminded me of like a young Ben Franklin.
He was going to be an engineer. I could feel it. He was going to be an engineer.
See it. Yeah, I could see him as a philosopher. Honestly, this kid's 10 years older now than when I taught him. So yeah, he's probably already an engineer. Yeah, but so he's doing great in the class. I mean, he's a very strong mathematician. And I was teaching just 1 or 2 sections of 7th grade. And so all the 7th grade classes gave the same test. And we kind of wanted to be standardized. Everybody gets 40 minutes to do it. You get 1 period. And he like only got through 2/3 of the test. So like best case scenario, you're getting 2/3 of the points. And like he knew it. He obviously knew how to do it. But 40 minutes isn't that long a time. And he just worked very methodically. And afterwards, I'd never seen him frustrated like that. He was always so mellow. And he just came up to me. He was like, why? Why did I only get 40 minutes? And I just didn't have a good answer. I mean, my answer was like, your French teacher wants you, like that's basically it.
Because it's the American system.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, this is actually in the UK, so it's a global system
so
we've got.
Yeah, right.
That's right. It's universal, the idea that the way we do schooling is in these funny buildings with bells ringing every 45 minutes to tell you where to go next. And we're trying to teach this beautiful, strange subject in that little tiny space. And so you get some weird distortions.
And you write that really the beauty of math is the opposite of the way that we teach it, Ben. That truly noodling on something and letting it marinate and having fun with it and playing with it and being okay with being wrong is kind of where math gets interesting.
Yeah. You think about solving a Sudoku. Very mathematical idea. It's not the numbers that make Sudoku mathematical. It's the logic, right? It's the idea of, okay, if I've already got something in that row and that column, then this number has to go there. If you took a finished Sudoku and showed it to somebody and you're like, isn't this beautiful? Look at that. They'd be like, that's fine. We got some numbers. But like the joy of Sudoku is in the solving of it, right? And it's the getting lost and running into dead ends and having to backtrack and be like, oh, okay, I know it's one of these 2 numbers, but okay, yeah, and that little moment of insight. So it's all the process. And that's true of mathematics too. It's the process. But of course, what we do in math class is we take hundreds of years of process and say, okay, here's the finished Sudoku. And we kind of make you memorize that finished Sudoku. And it's not that fun. It's just not that enjoyable.
Yeah, it's like we rip the poetry right out of the mathematics.
Yeah. We're giving you these very condensed versions that you're then supposed to digest very quickly.
Well, I want to begin. I would love for you to teach us, our stackers, how to make math fun. But before we get there, we're a bunch of finance nerds, which means to some degree, we all become math nerds. And it's funny, it's actually been through finance that I learned how closely related my English degree was to mathematics. And how everything bleeds into each other and how fun this can all be. But I want to begin with economics because math shows us how we can break the economy, you write, with a single die. You begin with this career fair as you're getting ready to graduate from college. You mind telling us that story? And how do you break the economy with a die roll?
Yeah. Every year, October, I guess, when I was in college, there'd be this big career fair in the gymnasium. This was Yale, so all the investment banks would come. I was the class of 2009. So if you're the class of 2007, 2008, those investment banks were huge employers, right? Tons of those kids went off to go work for Goldman, go work for Lehman. So this fall 2008. And it turns out some bad things had just happened in New York. And
what would that be, Ben?
Yeah,
I'm
right.
kidding.
So, yeah, right. It's funny, yeah. Right. Even for students today who are like a few years old when that happened, students I teach now, like they know, oh yeah, that was bad what happened in 2008. So they were just empty tables, right? Like you go through, like I think the CIA was still hiring, so you could go talk to the guys at the CIA, but the banks were not there. It turned out that was a huge year for Teach for America. Tons of kids from my year went to do Teach for America because it was like, well, okay, the banks aren't hiring, so all right, I guess I'm going to go teach in Mississippi.
But just to pause there for a second, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Oh yeah,
you know, I mean, surely it doesn't pay the same way.
Oh no, I mean, it's great. Like I didn't do Teach for America, but I went into teaching. I think that's great. I think, like, you're not wasting a year when you spend a year teaching kids math. That's a great way to spend a year.
Yeah, I interrupted. So you're there. There's no investment banks.
Right. So what went wrong? And there's a ton of ways to tell the story, and you can tell the story of incentives, and you can tell the story of like prime agent problems, and you can talk about the complexity of the derivatives they were creating. But one aspect of the story is just imagine rolling dice. Say you're rolling 2 dice and I'm rolling 1 die and just doubling it. If you played some dice games, you get a lot of 7s. Because no matter what you roll, there's always a way to make 7, right? The first one is a 1 and the second one could be a 6, or the first one's a 2 and the second one could be a 5. So there's lots of ways to make 7. So you get a lot of 7s. And you don't get that many 2s or 12s. Because the only way to roll a 12 is to roll double 6s. So you, with your 2 dice, you're getting a lot of 6s, 7s, 8s, and the occasional 2 and 12. Very middly kind of values, not many extremes.
It's almost like a mountain. I'm seeing this mountain with like 7 in the middle as the tall part, and then
exactly,
6, 8, 9, 5, and so on.
Yeah, exactly. Tallest bit in the middle there and then tapers off to the outside. And if you keep doing this with more and more dice, you get what we call a bell curve, right? A normal distribution where you roll 10 dice and you're very likely to get a kind of middle value and very unlikely to get all sixes, unless your dice are cheat dice, unless you do something where you're shaving off little bits to make it weighted differently. Like you're not going to get 10 sixes. That doesn't happen.
As my mom does when we play dice with her.
That's right. Yeah. A little research, I found out that there are all these ways to make trick dice back in the day. And my favorite was you would make wooden dice and you'd have the tree grow around a pebble. So you'd
You're kidding me.
Deliberately know. Yeah, I don't know. This is in John Scarn's book of dice. He's like a magician and like a card cheater kind of guy and game designer. One of the methods was, to like grow it around a pebble. And now you've got this heavy rock inside the wooden die and you carefully carve it so that heavy rock is like just where you need it to be. And then you have a weighted die.
Think about how premeditated this is, right? You know what I mean? There's cheating on the spur of the moment. Like I'm ready for game night to be over. Let's just turn the die over.
Yeah.
But the fact that I'm going to grow a tree so I can cheat at dice, whole different level.
I'm going to take the slowest growing thing we know of, and I'm going to like just cultivate this little cheat die. And then what if you lose the die? I don't know. Yeah, it seems a lot of trouble. And what percentage are you gaining? Maybe you get like 10% more sixes or something. It seems anyway. But people are really committed to cheating. Anyway, so that was a sidebar. But so you roll a bunch of dice, you're not going to get all sixes. But what if instead of rolling 10 dice, where like you might get a couple sixes, but it's going to be a random mix? What if I just take one die, and then I put up 9 mirrors next to it? And so you're just taking that one die and multiplying it by 10. You're going to get 10 sixes sometimes, because if the first die is a 6, all the others are automatically 6s. So instead of that graph you're picturing, that little mountain where like the middle values are the most likely, and then it tapers off to the sides and the extreme values almost never happen, you're going to get 10 sixes 1 out of 6 times. And another 1 out of 6 times, you'll get 10 ones. And so you're just going to get these really extreme outcomes if you just multiply that one die 10 times. So on first inspection, you go, okay, maybe these aren't so different, right? If I roll 2 dice, it goes from 2 to 12. That's the range of values. And if I roll 1 die and double it, again, it goes from 2 to 12. Doesn't seem so different, but it's super, super different in terms of the probabilities. Doing a bunch of independent dice, you get middle outcomes. Doing 1 die and multiplying it, you get a lot more extremes. Just
because one die, just the probability that you're going to roll the same number on 2 different dice is just 1 in 6, right?
Yeah. You can think about it too, like with opinion, right? If you go and ask 10 people about a restaurant, you get like a decent cross section of what opinion they have about the restaurant. If you ask one person about a restaurant and just copy and paste their answer 10 times, you're not really getting the whole variety of opinion. And you're likely to get, like, if that one person loved it, you're like, oh, what an amazing restaurant. It's like, no, one person loved it. It looks like 10 people now, but just because we copied and pasted.
Right. So what does this have to do with the economy? How does rolling 2 dice versus 1 die break the economy, or the other way around?
Yeah. So the dice here now become mortgages. So what happens is you give somebody a mortgage. So now you're the bank, right? We're used to thinking of ourselves as the homeowner or the person trying to get the mortgage. But say you're the bank, so you're loaning some money to somebody so they can buy a house. And there's a chance they default. That's the risk for you. The upside is they're going to keep paying you back, and you get that, check every month. And then the downside is maybe they default and you just don't get all your money back, right? Some of what you loaned them, you don't recoup. That's basically like rolling snake eyes for the bank. If you do a bunch of mortgages, the question is, what's happening? Are we in the world where each mortgage is kind of its own separate die that we're rolling? And so it's unlikely that everybody's going to default on their mortgage. Or are these mortgages more like just one die that's being rolled and the others are all mirrors of the same one? Yeah, exactly. So you sort of think under normal circumstances, you'd think they're probably mostly independent. Somebody loses their job, maybe they're going to default on their mortgage, somebody runs into some kind of hardship, but that shouldn't affect everybody. What if you're giving out tons and tons of mortgages? And what if you're doing it because home prices keep rising and rising and rising? And that's the only reason people can afford these mortgages, is they're just trusting that the home prices will keep rising and rising and rising. Then when the market takes a little bit of a dip, suddenly tons and tons of people default. That's more or less what happened, right? The banks were trying to model this. They had much more sophisticated models. They weren't just like me sitting there at a desk with 2 dice, studying the dice, being like, But they basically made the same sort of mistake in their modeling. They were using a kind of equation that sort of assumed that the dice were separate. And it's more like the dice were tied together.
We're all mirrors.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how these huge institutions can miss something that small. And yet you can even take this same thing, Ben, to a personal level. I mean, don't get me wrong. Everything you just described, the insurance industry is all built on this.
Yeah.
About this probability and insuring different risks. As you and I are getting ready to record a couple weeks before this airs, there's a hurricane that's getting ready to hit the the coast, but we know the hurricane's going to hit somewhere, but it's not going to hit everywhere. So if you law of large numbers, I can have other people pay for the horrible outcome that some people in the next few hours are about to have.
Yeah. And same thing with insurance, right? If you're an insurance company and you're insuring some homes in New England and some homes in California and some homes in Florida, you're probably okay. Because that would be a crazy hurricane that like goes up to Florida, bounces across, makes it all the way across continental US to California, and then goes up to New England. You're not going to have a bunch of insurance claims in all three of those places all at once. But if you're an insurer that just insures homes in Florida, say just in one city in Florida, and a terrible, tragic hurricane hits, suddenly you could have all of your customers making an insurance claim.
Now those are mirrors.
Exactly. And now you thought you were insuring 100 different houses that all were going to have kind of like different dice that you were rolling, but it turns out it was really just like you were insuring one die.
Yeah.
And so insurance companies have to do a lot of careful thinking about that of like, okay, how do we balance these risks and which risks go together and which risks are more like separate dice?
And even on a more personal level, this also applies, I would think, to building a portfolio, right? I mean, if you're building investments, the thing that always blew my clients away back when I was a financial planner, Ben, was that you could add riskier stuff to a portfolio and make the portfolio less risky. And I think that's the same thing as your die roll.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, that's a great paradox. Because you wouldn't think you'd be like, okay, you've already invested in these 10 safe companies. Now invest in 10 risky companies. Right. And you're like, oh, it's going to make me less safe. That's going to be worse. Why would you do that, man? And it's like, no, that's a good idea. Because what it is, it's not 10 risky companies. It's now you're invested in 20 companies. And so there are things that happen where like, the whole economy goes down a little bit, right? Like their recession can hit. They're not totally disconnected. But 20 different companies in 20 different industries, those are pretty disconnected. Those are more like separate dice. And so even if some of those dice are like, oh my gosh, that die has 50 sides, like it could go anywhere from 1 to 50. This is a really unpredictable die. If you got enough of those, it's actually more reliable than putting all your money on one 6-sided die.
It's so amazing. The math all the way through your book just shows a lot of these paradoxes. Let's move on to something else, which is statistics. I love your quotes about statistics. Of course, your Mark Twain quote, there's what lies, damn lies in statistics. And then what's your Winston Churchill quote? I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh, let's see. It's been a bit since I looked at it. Yeah. It's funny. One of the things I like about these quotes is that none of them turn out to, they're all quotes about how unreliable statistics are.
Right.
And then it turns out that none of them are actually, like, it wasn't really Mark Twain who said that. It was probably Benjamin Disraeli, or actually it was Mark Twain attributing it to Benjamin Disraeli, but we don't have any evidence that Disraeli ever said it. So it's funny. I like all these quotes about how like, oh, here's a reliable quote about how unreliable statistics are. But
well, that's one of my favorite quote of all time is, I don't believe stuff I read on the internet, Abraham Lincoln.
That's right. Yeah, right.
That's my favorite. Yeah. Let's talk about statistics. How do statistics lie to us?
Yeah. I mean, they lie to us because we ask them to. People talk about statistics as though there's nefarious business. But the fact is the world is too complicated, right? It's like it's too many numbers. You want to know something about, I don't know, the weather in a city you're moving to. And if somebody's like, oh, here's a spreadsheet of all the temperatures, high and low, and every hour for the last 30 years, you're like, thanks, I guess. I'm not going to look at this. Like, who's got time for that? Even if I'm moving to this city, I just give me the headline number. And that's what a statistic is. It's a headline number, right? Give me the average high temperature in July. Okay, 83 degrees. There you go. So now I know the average is about 83. Now, there are a lot of different ways to do an average high of 83. In Hawaii, the average high is 83, or about that, because it's always between 81 and 85. That's very different than like the average high here. I live in Minnesota. You might get a day with an average high of 83 because it could be anywhere from 55 to 105.
Yeah. I'm thinking about my daughter in Kansas City. I mean, they get worst snowstorms and they get the most brutal heat. But on average, it's fantastic.
Right. Yeah. You get the average human has like one ovary and one testicle. And it's like, well, it's not most humans. At average, it's true, but pretty atypical. But we need averages though, right? Because no one wants to look at all the data every single time. We need summaries. And so that's what statistics do. They summarize. And you just got to be wary of what they're leaving out. Because like you look at the back cover of a book, you then don't read the book and be like, oh, this wasn't mentioned on the back cover. They didn't even talk about this character. It's like, yeah, they had one paragraph to get you to buy the book. So same thing with an average, right? It's giving you one number. But one number standing in for 100 is always going to leave out a lot of information. So you got to just keep in mind, each of those summaries, what is it leaving out? You
talk about some statistics and some terms that our stackers really need to know. I'd love for you to dive into a couple because there's a couple I think that really, really apply to our community. One that I love that I think people don't pay enough attention to is standard deviation. Can you talk about standard deviation and also why we should use standard deviation, and what I love about your book, why we also maybe don't want to always trust standard deviation?
Yeah, this is one when I teach statistics. We do a day talking about the mean and the median, and then we spend like a week and a half talking about standard deviation. And that's really like, if you can grasp standard deviation, you're on your way to really grasping statistics. It's that same problem I was talking about with Hawaii versus, say, Kansas City, where even if you take a stretch of time when they have the same average temperature, Hawaii is really close to the average, right? Every single data point that you look at is within a few degrees of the average. In Kansas City, maybe it's the same average. Maybe it's 83 degrees for that same time, but the data points are all over the place. Some of them are very far from the average. And like worst case scenario, you could have Kansas City, let's make it 80 to make the number easier. Say the average is 80, but half the days are 60 and half the days are 100. That's like super far. Any given day, you're really far from the average, but the average is still 80. It's still the same as Hawaii, where it's 80 degrees every day. So standard deviation is a measure of how far the data points typically are from the average. So in Hawaii, if it's always, 79, 81, around there, you're going to have a standard deviation of around 1 degree, because typically data points are about 1 degree from the average. But in Kansas City, if the typical day is 20 degrees from the average, the standard deviation will be about 20. The technical calculation is like, I'm fudging it a little tiny bit, but that's basically the principle. It's how far is your data from the average.
What I love about this for investors, Stackers, what Ben's talking about, I love this because it tells you how bumpy the plane ride's going to be. When you look at a fund, you go to someplace like Morningstar.com, one of the Yahoo Finance, wherever, it will show you standard deviation. And that will show you, to Ben's point, it'll show you the amount of bouncing around. This thing that you're potentially going to buy is going to, I'm a nervous flyer, Ben. I don't know about you, but when I get on a plane and there's a lot of turbulence and the pilot says nothing, I'm scared to death. I think they're all flailing out there, everybody screaming, we're all about to die. But if the pilot just comes on ahead of time and tells me it's going to be bumpy, and I feel like standard deviation is the pilot telling me how bumpy it's going to be.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's a nice analogy. Yeah. And the fact is, right, in finance, you know this much better than I do. The rides that are going to get you the highest up, maybe this isn't what you want in a plane ride, is to go high. I'm mixing metaphors here. But the ones that are going to get you the best return, they're going to be bumpy. You pay for that return, right? And the way you pay is with risk.
I love that. There's no such thing as a free lunch, which is what we all want.
Yeah, I've occasionally worked at places where there was a free lunch, but it's not really free. It was built in. My salary was probably a little lower because they were giving me lunch.
They somehow get you with making you punch in.
That's right.
A second, you talk about correlation, which is another one that I love. And in our community, Ben, people often, and you see this all the time too, right? People mistake correlation with causation.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, correlation, because it's a little complicated, but the best way to think about it, I think, is a scatter plot. And so you think about the two things you're thinking about. So height and weight is a classic one for people. And if you just do a little scatter plot where, how far to the right you are is how tall you are, and then how high up is how much you weigh, they're generally going to go together, right? Like Shaquille O'Neal is 7'1" and like 300 plus pounds. And so like he's going to be way, way in the upper right corner. And my younger daughter is 1.5. She's like 2 feet tall. She weighs about 20 pounds. She's going to be way, way down in the lower left corner because she's very small, short and light. And like in general, it's going to be a mix as you go up, but it's going to be a little unpredictable. And you got to be careful about telling yourself a story. Like, does height cause weight? Kind of a little bit. Does weight cause height? Not really. And that's the very simplest one you can talk about is weight and height. And then you get into other more complicated things. And there's always complicated variables you haven't pictured that are kind of hiding in the background.
You make some big points throughout this project. One that really resonated with me is this idea of making mistakes. That making mistakes is a part of the game of mathematics. And when people, I think, first a neophyte to math or somebody that hated math like I did in junior high goes, wait a minute, I got punished for mistakes. It's like, no, math is all about making mistakes. How does math, speaking of correlation, Ben, how does math correlate with being okay with making mistakes?
Yeah. So I talked to a lot of people who are research mathematicians, right? Their job is to go out and solve new math problems no one has ever solved. You don't do that by never making a mistake, right? It's just not possible, right? Research is to try something, it fails, repeat that 30 times. Still haven't solved it yet, but now you at least have a better idea about what fails, and now you can go back and spend the next month trying different things that might have a better chance of working. And the same is true anytime you're learning, I think. There's this blank page problem. I see this in writing too. You can't edit a draft that you haven't written, right? You need to get a first draft down and then you can start working on it. So like psychologists love to use this classic problem, which is clearly old from the numbers in it, but like a bat and a ball, like wiffle bat, wiffle ball, together they cost $1.10. And the bat is $1 more than the ball. So what do they cost, each of them?
Yeah, so it's $1.10.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So you think, okay, it's got $1.10 because they add to $1.10 and they're $1 apart. But then you actually look at that once you've written that down, and they're actually 90 cents apart, right? From $1 to 10 cents.
Right.
And they were supposed to be $1 apart. But then once you've got that answer down, and that's the first answer everybody gives, then you can adjust it. Then you can tweak it, right? You can say, okay, so I need them to be a little farther apart, but still add up to $1.10. So it's $1.05 and 5 cents.
I love how I'm the perfect guinea pig, Ben, and I fell right into that one.
That's right. Well, that's,
You're
you're
welcome.
human, right? Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's all. I'll slip you a 20. We plan that in advance. But that's exactly right, though. Everybody makes that error. That is like a standard error. This took me a while to accept as a teacher, that there would be mistakes that I see students make. And as a beginning teacher, I'd be like, no, don't make that mistake. Let me try to prepare you so you don't make that mistake. And like, that's not at all how I think about it now. It's like, okay, good. This is a mistake you have to make. Like, we're trying to get over there. There's a big hole in the way. You're going to fall in the hole. There's no way around it. You got to learn where that hole is. So we'll fall in, I'll help you out, and then I'll show you how to walk around the hole. And you might fall in a few more times, and that's fine. And that's just learning. You got to make the mistakes, you got to see why they're mistakes, and then move on. And
you also say the best way to solve problems sometimes is by walking away from it.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. I went through a book, it was by Quanta magazine, which does a lot of great reporting on math. And I just went through, and it's like reporting people making discoveries in math. And I just made a list of all the moments that they made the discovery, when the mathematician figured out the problem. And it was like, while he was dropping his son off at his piano lesson, while she was taking a train, while he was at the dentist, while he was brushing his teeth, a lot of oral hygiene involved. It was never like, and then while he's playing the drums, it was never while they're sitting down working on the math. It was like, and then in the third hour of working on the math, she came up with the solution. It's like, no, it's never that. It's always, they worked hard on it for a while. They did not get anywhere. They walked away, came back, and that's when the click happened.
One of my favorite stories is it was some complex math problem that was out there. I'm not going to remember specifically the story. Frankly, I don't have it written down in my notes, but I just remember that you wrote about this complex math problem. Nobody could solve it. And then this, I think it was a professor, gets this letter or an email from this.
Yeah, I love this one. Yeah.
Grad student. And just the answer was far more simple than you thought.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't even a grad student. It was this guy who I think was sort of like an amateur mathematician who'd done a whole career in some other field. And then what was funny about it was the solution came, this problem that had been outstanding for 40 years. People had been trying to solve it, all the greatest experts in the field. No one could solve it. And then this guy, Thomas Royen, who's just worked in some other field, like an insurance agent or something, he sent a Microsoft Word attachment as like, and that had the solution in it. And that's the least auspicious form of file you could possibly receive. That's not like sometimes I write stuff in Microsoft Word, but serious mathematicians do not ever write stuff in Microsoft Word. It's just not the way to typeset
mathematics. You're saying that's not how the pros do it. The pros don't do it that way.
Like, as if you'd sent it like written on a Pop-Tart or something. It was like really not the way you expect the solution to a 40-year-old math problem to be resolved. But there it was, and the professor received it, this guy Richards, was at Penn State, looked at it and was like, oh yeah, that's it. I've been looking for this problem for decades. All the experts I know have been looking for the solution to this for decades. But here it is. There it is right there. There's this guy who just solved it, and he solved it while he was brushing his teeth one day. Very simple solution. But the issue is there's so many possible solutions out there that even if it's simple, you need a lot of people searching for it, and it takes a kind of stroke of insight to see it sometimes.
Well, and I love the idea of just being separated from, I feel like to both of those stories, the biggest insights I get about my career, about this show, about my life are when I'm out jogging or in your shower, like you said, some type of hygiene or physical activity. It's never when I'm doing it. You talk about the difference between good math and great math. And I want to end on this because this was a really nice gut punch. A good mathematician has the patience to reach complicated answers. A great mathematician has the patience to reach simple answers. And I think we just talked about that. Good mathematicians can remember all the details. A great mathematician can forget all the details. You go on, but the last one, Ben, I'd love for you to comment on. A good mathematician wants to be the best. A great mathematician wants to learn from the best. Talk about math and mentorship for a moment.
Yeah, I got sort of contrast came to me after speaking with this mathematician, Nobao Chow. He won the Fields Medal some number of years ago, which is kind of one of the most famous prizes in mathematics. And in his home country of Vietnam, he's like a household name. He's like a super famous guy. I talked to somebody from Vietnam once. They're like, "Oh, you spoke with Nobao Chow?" Which I wish we had mathematicians like that in the U.S. Like, closest we've got is Will Hunting, who's, like not even, he's like our fourth most famous Matt Damon character, much less our, our most famous celebrity.
Can you see TMZ following mathematicians around?
Right.
Ben Orlin gets out of his car and you've got, you got to.
Yeah, I love it. Just the cameras swirling around. Yeah,
that's right. They're in Minnesota. You got to tell your kids to keep the blinds closed.
That's right. Yeah. No, I love it. So I got a chance to speak with him at a press conference. And it was funny because there's a bunch of science journalists in the room, but mathematics is the research is kind of so hard to access that even science journalists, like, weren't quite sure what to ask him. So I started asking him about just his own path, his career. As a kid, he'd been a real hotshot. So he had, he was one of these kids who did the math competitions and was a total superstar, won, I think, maybe consecutive gold medals or something like that at this big international math competition, which is that like really puts you on the map as a very, very high level young mathematician. And he said when he was young like that, it was all about the competition. He loved the competition. And it's funny, I'm not a competitive guy. That's just like it's not how I experience the world, but I see it in some of my students, and it really does. It can get them excited about mathematics. I see it in middle schoolers where like they like being the best. They like being good at something, and which I understand, that's appealing. But then, right, Nobao Chow, he gets to, I guess it's grad school, and he's been flying high the whole way, and he's been doing great, and then he hits the wall. And he runs into things he just can't understand what he's reading. He can't understand what's going on. And everybody hits that point, right? Nobao Chow is one of the most celebrated mathematical researchers in the world. If he's hitting that point in mathematics, everybody hits that point sooner or later. He talked about that as kind of the second phase of his career. He really relied on his advisor, his thesis advisor. What they would do is every week they'd have these meetings and they'd just spend the whole hour, maybe going through a couple lines of mathematics. Could be 3 lines on the page, like, right, sort of like poetry, like we were talking about earlier. There's a lot to digest in those couple of lines. Mathematics is so dense that way. So that's what they do, whole hour, a couple of lines. And they did that week by week by week. And it started to click into place and he started to make sense of the mathematics he was learning. And then, he finishes his PhD and he starts working on this big kind of collaborative project in mathematics called the Langlands program, which is this like kind of set of things we think are true, but we're not sure. And so people are out there trying to verify them and prove them. And once he got into there, it was just like pure collaboration. He talks about the competitive instinct, the competitive impulse, all of that vanished. And it was just a bunch of people trying to solve this problem. Picture like a bunch of people just trying to build a bridge together. There's like this huge river. They're trying to build the bridge across. Everybody's working on a different part of it. And nobody's like, hey, I want the glory of the bridge. Like, you get off of here, man. You don't build anything. They're like, oh, no, go. We're trying to get this bridge across the river. Like, oh, great. You're working on that part. Cool. I'll work over here. Like, oh, I worked on that earlier. Here's this thing that can help you. And bridge I'm using somewhat literally because it's sort of connection between two seemingly very distant areas of mathematics.
Yeah.
It just felt purely collaborative to him. So he moved through those 3 phases, right? Like first competitive, I'm the best. Then the very humbling, like, I am not the best. I need help. Please help me. And then once he'd gotten that help, now it was helping each other. Now it was all reciprocal. I wish more students could get there. You shouldn't need to be one of the best mathematicians in the world to get to that final phase. I think, in a good education, we can experience that the whole way through.
Oh, it helps everybody. And I just love that. I think it's a great place to end. The book is called Math with Bad Drawings. By the way, you not only get all of these stories and all these phenomenal examples of different pieces of math. I love your chapter on geometry. That was a whole different area we'll have to do next time, Ben, because I'm fascinated by geometry and mathematics and architecture. And this idea that constraints make us better. I think that's another theme that we didn't have time to get to. But not only do you get all that, you also get Ben's amazing drawings, which
I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, the book is called Math with Bad Drawings for a reason. My niece who just turned 9, not only can she perfectly mimic my drawing style, she can also do several other kinds of drawing styles. So she's just strictly a better artist than I am. She's already 9, so I'm 37.
Yeah, you already hate that kid, don't you, Ben?
Yeah,
you already hate that kid.
Despise it. Yeah, run me out of a job.
Math with Bad Drawings available everywhere?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And anywhere you get your books, you should get Math with Bad Drawings.
Awesome. Well, Ben, thanks for being a mentor to us. And hopefully we helped a few more people love math more. I super appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Joe. It was a fun conversation.
Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. And what a nice guy that Ben Orlin is, don't you think? Could you imagine that guy being mean? I don't think so. And by mean, I mean average. Well, I also mean, but I think we can go with both in this case. Here's a stat that Ben often talks about that we didn't get to today. When we talk about average, what's the difference between being mean and being the median? I'll be back right after I go try to cross these parallel lines.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why drivers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is America's largest and most trusted online nursery with thousands of trees and plants and over 2 million happy customers? Whether you're planting fruit trees, adding privacy, brightening things up with flowers, or bringing in houseplants, Fast Growing Trees has it all. Even better, they can help you find options that are right for your climate, your space, and lifestyle. Click Order Grow. Every plant arrives healthy with the Alive and Thrive guarantee straight to your door. So if you're ready to get planting, this is the moment. Right now, they have great deals on spring planting essentials, up to half off on select plants. And listeners to our show get 20% off their first purchase when using the code WWO at checkout. That's an additional 20% off. Better plants and better growing at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WWO at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code WWO. Now's the perfect time to plant. Let's grow together. Use WWO to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Go to growingfasttrees.com for details.
Hey there, stackers. I'm expert parallel Parker and the guy who Joe's mom calls the 0.5 when she talks about how many kids people have, Joe's mom's neighbor Doug. When Joe's mom explained to me that I was the 0.5, I told her that that was mean. She said that she wasn't mean at all, just truthful, which leads us to today's question. When we talk about averages, we talk about mean and median. What's the difference? The mean is the average of all the numbers. So if we have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 100, the mean would be 53. So you can see how that doesn't actually get us to the middle. If we're looking for the middle number, we'd instead talk about the median, which is like the middle of the road. So now you know the rest of the story. And here comes two guys who nobody ever called the median or mean, Joe and OG.
Oh, I think one of us can be mean. I think, Doug, there is a through line there from time to time. Maybe.
I'm not touching it.
It is fun, OG, that math can tell a story. And I didn't realize that until I became a financial planner, really, that often it's the numbers. I mean, how many times on this show have you said, it's not about your feelings, it's just math?
How many times do I say that every day? It's not about your feelings. Stop crying.
I don't care how you feel.
That you're sad. Stop spending money.
Life is a division problem.
I spend money when I get yelled at. When we think about money, I think we like to put a lot of energy around the story that goes with it. Wait, hold on. You don't understand. You see, what happened was, and it's like this big, long story. And it's like, sometimes you have to go, all right, cool. But did you spend more than you make? Yeah. But hold on. There's a story. It's like, I get it. You know, you can't tell stories necessarily unless you're Ben to make money. You know what I mean? Unless you're like, that's your job. Sometimes just kind of taking away the story. And maybe that's why the career path that I have is what I do, because maybe I lack the velvet that sometimes goes on the hammer. Maybe there's just not enough. Maybe it should be a little, a little bit more massaged. But I just good with the numbers, me good numbers, me no good story.
It just means you care.
I care in a different way.
Yes,
people say.
Absolutely.
Roger said this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
when he was on the show. I have a different way of showing my care.
he does.
Just to say, stop doing dumb things with your money.
It's like a warm hug from OG.
Well, I mean, it's as warm as you're going to get.
I know that OG, we talked about standard deviation, which certainly, as I mentioned, is probably my favorite.
Super exciting.
Well, it is. It's my favorite stat to talk about back when I was a financial planner. And even now, I like it because I will look at investment. I'll look at the standard deviation and it kind of tells me what to expect. It kind of tells me that, okay, this is all in the range of acceptable. Minus 30 is what this does. So I should be okay with that. I really like that measurement because that measurement by itself tells me a big story. Is there any mathematical measurement that you prefer when you're talking to either clients or when you're digging through Morningstar, or are there any measurements that really catch your fancy, as Mom says?
What catches my eye? I think that most people get the idea of Monte Carlo incorrect. I think people strive to get this high number of probability with Monte Carlo. If you've never heard that before, Monte Carlo simulations basically take your known data set, right? So I make this much money, I save this much money, I want to spend this much money in retirement, I'm going to add this inflation to it. Like those are all the knowns. And what's the big unknown? The big unknown is what's the rate of return going to be? What's the money going to do while I'm investing it? And we have 100 years worth of reasonable market data. So you can say, I'm going to take all the known returns of a portfolio like yours, 80% stock and 20% fixed income or 60-40 or whatever. I'm going to take all the known returns since 1926 on a deck of cards. I'm going to play the deck in a different order over the next 100 years. And then I'm going to say, did you end up with enough money? Yes or no? Did you die with $1? Cool. Check mark in the pass column. And we're going to shuffle the deck and we're going to play the cards out in a different way. And you can imagine if you get unlucky with the cards, who among us hasn't been unlucky with the cards before? Am I right? If you get unlucky with the cards, things start getting out of hand in a hurry, right? If you happen to retire in the beginning of 2000, you had a pretty crappy 10-year period. You didn't go the way that you wanted it to. And so what Monte Carlo does is you play that game 1,000 times, and then it gives you a percentage. And the percentage is how many times did you be perfectly successful? Meaning you live to your end goal with at least $1. And so people look at this and say, well, my Monte Carlo simulation is an 80. I need it to be a 90. It's like, look, if you looked at the weather and it said 80% chance of rain, you're packing an umbrella. It's probably going to rain. It might not rain, but it's probably going to rain. And I think we strive too much for this high perfection number with these different scenario tools.
Right. Because in this case, it says 80% chance of sunshine and you're packing umbrellas.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And the other way that I look at Monte Carlo is to say, what's the chance of having to make a change along the way? So in that 80% number, that means that 20% of the scenarios, 200 out of the 1,000 chances, you had to do something different along the way. And it doesn't give you a severity of the difference. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't say like, or else you'll be broke. It's like, maybe you just have to slightly spend a little less for a few years, or maybe you have to change your asset allocation a little bit. It's not 100% or zero. You know what I mean? Like there's an 80-20 doesn't mean 80% I make it, 20% I'm destitute living in a van down by the river. It just means 20% of the time we're going to have to do something different along the way. Well, guess what? All of financial planning is doing something different along the way.
You're always pivoting.
When we look at planning, nobody does a plan, well, at least you shouldn't, and then just say, well, I hope it works out in 30 years. You're supposed, you got to check it every you got to check it every so often, right? And make sure that you're still on track and things are going the way that you want it to. So I think we get focused on Monte Carlo numbers and maybe we don't understand what it all means or think of it the way that I think you should. And then we strive for this perfection number, which is not necessary. It doesn't need to be 90. It doesn't even need to be, I think 80 is probably good. Maybe 70 is even good. But if you're stressing yourself out at 70 or 75, I don't think you need to be.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of that has to do with your age and where you're at in life, but you get the idea.
Because if you're 70 or 75, you're probably going to be able to pivot somehow, slightly, maybe even, and still be okay in another 20% of scenarios or 15% of scenarios.
Yeah.
You'll be able to pivot enough to make it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Big thanks again to Ben Orlin. And it is wild how stats tell a story. And sometimes, to your point, OG, they tell a different story than they think that you're telling you. Let's move on to our headline.
Hello, darlings. And now, it's time for your favorite part of the show, our Stacking Benjamin's Headlines.
Our headline today comes to us from Morningstar, and it is written by Danny Noonan. The number one...
Noonan. Hold on. There's no way that's real.
That can't be true.
Straight out of
You don't think
Caddyshack.
Danny Noonan's his real name?
Danny Noonan.
There's no way.
If that's his name, I need to play golf with this dude, honestly.
Yes.
I mean, he's probably, what, 60 by now?
Oh, more than that. Yeah.
Danny, I know Danny's a big fan of the show, so come out yourself. Come join us on an episode of Stacking Benjamins. Prove to these people.
Miss it, drugs, Danny?
Miss it. Well, the world needs stitch stickers too.
I've often thought of becoming a priest.
Danny's got some good news, OG. When Danny tells us what the number one way is that Americans are becoming millionaires, what do you think it is? Bingo?
Be the ball.
Not professional sports.
Oh. What is the number one way? Home equity.
Danny writes, patience and discipline are easily understood, but hard to put into practice. Investing serves as the perfect litmus test. One could reasonably argue these two traits are among the most important factors driving long-term investment success. So patience and discipline. Number one way Americans become millionaires isn't through timely real estate purchases.
Dang it.
Home equity. It's funny that you said that, and that's his number one. Or being early investors in startups. The formula is much simpler. This is good news for all our stackers. Consistent buying, usually in the form of automatic contributions from every paycheck into a retirement account. Look no further than a recent report from Fidelity, which shows there's more 401k millionaires on its platform than ever before. They show the number, by the way. They went from just over 100,000 millionaires in 2017 to over 500,000 millionaires at Fidelity. Now, Fidelity might have more 401k accounts than they used to have, so that could be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly when you look at this graph that's just up and left, I don't think it's just explained by, well, Fidelity has more 401ks. I think there's something to this fact that becoming a 401k millionaire is a good way to get there.
Well, it's weird that if you just do the same thing over and over again, it eventually compounds. What was the thing that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago? That if you save $1,000 a month, the amount of time that it takes you to get to 300,000 is the same amount of time it takes you to get from 300,000 to $1 million.
That's amazing.
Just because the snowball is starting to, there's all these threads on Reddit about like, how long did it take you to get to whatever, right? It's like, how long did it take you to get $1 million? 22 years. And then it took me 6 years to get to 2 million. And then it took me 5 years to get to 3 million. And then it took me, 36 months to get to 5, it's like all those doubles, well, not even doubles, all those millions come easier. And it sounds really grotesque to say, the first million's the hardest, it's like, well, yeah, no kidding.
Duh.
This is the problem with compounding, is that you don't see compounding in advance because you just don't believe it. The brain cannot process it. And even if you type the numbers in correctly in your calculator, you just don't believe that $100 a month for 50 years turns into whatever. You're
saying that Ben Orlin can show us all the math and we'd still go, yeah, no.
Well, yes and no. I think that you go, okay, yeah, whatever. Maybe it's right. Maybe it's wrong.
Sure.
It's probably wrong, but I don't have anything better to do. The only time you believe compounding is in the rearview mirror. You only see that backwards. And if you have any amount of wealth, if you have $100,000 in your 401k, if you've got $500,000 saved, if you've got $1 million saved, I guarantee that you can look back and go, golly, sometime you've said this. Can you believe, like, just 10 years ago we cracked 100,000 and now we've got 500. Like, what is going on? How did that happen? I never in a million years thought I would get to whatever. And I'm here at 40, or whatever, that sensation happens because you just can't process it in advance, right? It's the whole thing of like, how big is a piece of paper folded 50 times? Well, you can't fold a piece of paper 50 times. I know. But if you could, how big would it be? It'd be as big as it is from here to the sun. Yeah, it is. We just can't do it in our brains. It's really weird. So you have to have belief and patience and discipline, like Noonan is saying here, to reap the rewards of it, because otherwise you never get there, and you have to have a certain amount of capital first as it starts to snowball.
This is a 3-part story, I think. Part number 1, when you first start off, I think the only thing you need to do, OG, plow as much money in as you can and make sure you're using either something like frankly, as long as you're using equities, I don't think it matters what you use. Frank, small cap value, it could be something fairly aggressive like that, but using the S&P 500 total stock market index, just pick something that historically has beaten the heck out of inflation. That's step one. Step two, you get to that point that it finally matters what your asset allocation is. And I think then you figure out based on your goals, what those funds are. And by the way, it doesn't take 10 funds. It might be 4, might be 5, could even be 3, but you need to diversify a little closer to what we call the efficient frontier. And then I think then the third thing is repeat steps 1 and 2. And that's it. I think that is it. I think the reason why people think they need to do more is you just kind of, you're like, oh, it can't be that easy. But this piece from Fidelity shows it is that easy.
Yep.
I love where Noonan goes next with this piece. He goes somewhere brilliant, OG. He says, but the investing world is filled with distractions, and it's easy to get tripped up. Rising markets often invite bad behavior, with some investors making no point of differentiation between the stock market and a casino. How many times have you heard people, almost always, inexperienced investors who go, well, I don't really play the stock market. Like when you tell me that you're playing the stock market, you're most probably an inexperienced investor. One timely example he brings up is leveraged and inverse exchange traded funds, which now have surged in popularity. Remember how a few weeks ago we talked about MicroStrategy, and they had this new ETF that was coupled into MicroStrategy, and pundits were predicting, I think Michael Kitzes and others were predicting, that this is going to make nobody money except for the people selling it. Danny Noonan goes right after this approach. It says a recent Bloomberg story highlighted one of those investment vehicles that's designed to give investors 3 times the daily return of MicroStrategy, MSTR. So what is MSTR? MicroStrategy, for people who don't know, is a company largely tied to Bitcoin because it holds a large amount of Bitcoin on its balance sheet. So MicroStrategy, at the time this was written, was up over 100% this year. But get this, OG, if you went with the product that 3X's its return on a daily basis, you are down more than 80% so far this year. So then Noonan asks the question, how is that possible? And this is another Ben Orlin math problem.
Say math.
Yes. He said compounding also works in reverse. So if those down days or more downy down, then the up days are uppy up. If it slowly goes up, but it massively goes down on a few days, you're going to be in a world of hurt. So we're sitting as we record this, well, as the piece was written, and it was written on September 17th.
So that means it's a buy. Down 80.
There you go.
Get in.
Yeah.
Time to 3X the 3X. Can I get that fund on margin? That's really my question.
110% up if you just bought MicroStrategy stock versus down 81% if you bought the 3X.
Yeah. Well, that, and because the leverage fund resets daily. That's the other big missing piece, is people just look at the annual return or the quarterly return or whatever and say, oh, it's up 100, I'd be up 300. And to your point, no, it's the volatility that matters. And that's really what you're playing. This is a symptom of people thinking they don't have enough time because they don't believe the compounding. So it all kind of comes back to the same problem, which is you're 45 years old and you go, I haven't done anything yet, or I feel really far behind. I need to try to hit a grand slam here because I need to get caught up. And the problem is that if you do that, there's a really good chance that you're going to make it completely unattainable, right? If you take what little money you have at 45, if you're behind and you say at 45, I need to go to the casino, I'm going to play this all on red and black until I get to, caught up to my peers, it may work. There may be an outcome there that's successful, but a lot of times it's not going to work. And if you do this with investing and you do some esoteric investment choices, or you're playing the options market or something like that, there's a chance you could be successful. There's an article that I saw the other day about an investor in Canada, who went from some relatively small amount, $100,000, $200,000 to $450 million in Tesla in options and lost it all. And now he wants to blame the broker for letting him even do it.
Right.
You should have told me to get out.
It is so wild how emotional we get. Brian Feraldi had a great social media piece going, if you're like the 401k person and it goes $10 a share to $20 a share, which by the way, 100% rate of return, right? I mean, huge return, but it goes 10 to 20 to 30. You are high-fiving yourself. But if it goes 10 to 40 to 30, there's so much consternation. There's so much, what did I do wrong? How did I mess this up? And you ended up in both cases, OG, at the same point. There's so much emotion. And I think Danny gets it right here, saying the best investing may not always be thrilling, but that's for the better. Keep your emotions out of it.
Yes.
Take your paycheck.
Take your emotions out of it.
Every 2 weeks, just put more money in. You got it.
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Interestingly, you did just have an emotion as you said that. It was anger and frustration.
If only he'd express anger from time to time. If we could get that out of him.
He isn't emotionless. We've been mistagging him all these years.
It's just malcontent.
We will link to this piece in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com like we do every week. And of course, in our newsletter, The 201, we will dive deeper into math problems with Ben Orlin and also into today's headline. Always free, twice a week, stackingbenjamins.com/201 to get the newsletter. That brings us to the end of today's show. Doug, I don't really have anything for the back porch. Big thanks to everybody who has left us a review of the show. And I did mention this last week once. I've got a ton of books, and I don't want to trade books for reviews, but I've done this in the past.
But I'll trade books for reviews.
If you were going to leave us a review, and what takes us to push you over the edge is the fact that you can read one of these books by somebody like Ben Orlin, who comes on here. Send me just a snapshot of your review, or let me know that you left the review, joe@stackingbenjamins.com. And I'd be happy to clean out my office again, my semi-annual.
Don't send Joe the review. I know Joe at Stacking Benjamins. Don't send him the review. Put the review out for the world and then send him a little note like, hey, man, go look over here.
Thank you.
To prove that and then send me my damn book.
My interpreter, Doug. Yes, absolutely. Amen. What Doug said. I think it's all for the back porch today. Looking at the time, I think it's time to head out anyway. Doug, let's do this. Wrap it up for us. What should be on our to-do list after today's show?
Well, Joe, here's what's stacked up on our to-do list for today. First, take some advice from Ben Orlin. Want to understand your investments better? Use math to make it more fun. There's something nobody ever said. Stats like standard deviation tell a story that's hard to understand otherwise. Second, hoping to become a millionaire? Try your workplace retirement plan. You don't have to be all fancy to be rich. But the big lesson? Don't criticize Joe's mom for singing Tom Jones.
Why? Is that something different for her?
It's not unusual. Thanks to the Ben Orlin for making math fun today. You'll find his book, Math with Bad Drawings, wherever books are sold. We'll also include links in our show notes at stackingbenjamins.com. If you click that link to buy it, you'll help the podcast. This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2024, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. Joe gets help from a few of our neighborhood friends. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamin Show.
we were talking about emotionless or lacking empathy. And Joe, you know, maybe not but you've heard of Jocko.
Sure.
In his podcast. This is probably one of my favorite bits that he has. It's shown up on my feed from time to time. Doug says he doesn't know who this is, but I'm almost guaranteeing as soon as he hears this man's voice, he'll be like, "Oh, that guy." Okay, so I feel like at some small microscopic level, maybe we have some similar DNA here. So here's this from Jocko.
One of my direct subordinates, one of my guys that worked for me, he would call me up or pull me aside with some major problem, some issue that was going on. And he'd say, "Boss, we got this and that and the other thing." And I'd look at him and I'd say, "Good." And finally one day he was telling me about some issue that he was having, some problem. And he said, "I already know what you're going to say." And I said, "Well, what am I going to say?" He said, "You're going to say good." He said, "That's what you always say. When something is wrong and going bad, you always just look at me and say good." And I said, "Well, yeah, when things are going bad, there's going to be some good that's going to come from it. Didn't get the new high-speed gear we wanted? Good. Didn't get promoted? Good. More time to get better. Oh, mission got canceled? Good. We can focus on another one. Didn't get funded. Didn't get the job you wanted. Got injured. Sprained my ankle. Got tapped out? Good. Got beat? Good. You learned. Unexpected problems? Good. We have the opportunity to figure out a solution." That's it. When things are going bad, don't get all bummed out. Don't get startled. Don't get frustrated. If you can say the word good, guess what? It means you're still alive. It means you're still breathing. And if you're still breathing, well then hell, you still got some fight left in you. So get up, dust off, reload, recalibrate, re-engage, and go out on the attack.